Greetings all, Shane Bruce, Restomod Daisy. Yes, it's time for a redo, it's time for a remake, it's time for version 2, the mighty Daisy Model 105B Cutaway. A Restomod initiative to help you, the viewer, understand how your Daisy works so that you, the viewer, can work on your very own gun and you don't have to send it to me to do anything. We're going to cover some basic mechanical standards that apply to all post-78 Daisies, ones with the plastic trigger, such as this, but much of what we're going to cover today also applies to the pre-1978 Daisies, all the way back to 1958, all the way back to 1941, maybe not quite as far back as 33, but most every Daisy made is going to have these components in it, and they're going to do the jobs that we described to you. All right, so let's back out and take a look at the overall gun. As you can see, from the roll stamp. Oh, roll stamp close up now.
All right. Keep wanting to back out and then come in.
In, out, in, out. I know. It's a lot to ask. Eventually we'll get a focus on it.
Oh, we got it.
All right. So 105B, this is a current production gun out of Rogers, Arkansas. Post 78. You know that because it has a plastic trigger with a safety. And why does it have a safety? Because you'll shoot your eye out. Yeah, exactly.
It's like there's more regulation.
As a result of legislation, and general legal shenanigans, this little device was incorporated into all Daisies manufactured after 1978. It does not exist on Daisies built prior to that. And this is a clue as to when the vintage of your gun might have been built. Anyway, you'll notice that, oddly enough, it's mounted with a Red Ryder buttstock from about a 1940s gun. Odd, but true. And that's because it's a small frame Daisy, which refers to this component. This is the frame. And small frame Daisies are kind of universal. Daisy built wide bodies as well, but we're not talking about those today. We haven't done a cutaway on one of those. Probably won't. But small frame Daisies have a number of commonalities. We're going to cover a couple of them, as illustrated by the cutaway. Let's take a look. We have a trigger. We have a plunger. This little piece of metal right here, and you'll notice it travels all the way up through here, and oh my god, there's a spring wrapped around it. And then up to here, there's a pin that stops the spring, and then the mighty air tube. And this device in here, this area, is called the compression chamber. And that's where air is compressed to propel the BB down the barrel, which starts here, actually starts here, but you can see it there. Knocks the BB with the air tube, gives it a puff of air, travels all the way down to the end of the barrel. Oh, that's missing. Oh, that front sight's missing, and then the BB magically flies to a target and hits it every time. That's part of the magic of Daisies. That's the basic operating principles. Now, let's watch it work one time. I'm going to pull the trigger. That's going to release the sear, which is, let's see if we can get this little metal piece. That little piece down there. That piece right there is a sear.
Hold on, let me zoom in.
Zoom in. We got to zoom?
Let's go.
We got to zoom.
Is it this?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we do.
Learn something every day. That's the sear. And when we pull the trigger, it's going to release. Let go of a little piece of metal here on the back side of the plunger assembly and allow the plunger to do what the spring wants to do. Because the spring right now wants to go forward, but it can't because it's being held back. So let's see. You got the wide view? Here we go. Boom! Compressed air, BB fired, target hit, shrieks of joy. That's the basic operational principle. Now, because it's a cutaway, and we actually cut away more this time than we did last time. We took this outer plate here. You'll see a little shelf right there on this side. Let me incline the gun. There's a little shelf here. Well, there's also one on this side of the gun that engages these two little feet. The reason that was engineered into the gun was to keep this plunger assembly from trying to dive during the compression stroke. And by diving, I mean the lever normally will try to pull the plunger down. So in order to keep the plunger straight, Daisy installed that little trackway there to make sure that's happening. On the original cutaway, I did not remove the trackway and cut away that part. As a result, the view was partially occluded. You could not see the tip of the lever. You could not see the knuckle of the lever. It was difficult to pick up the guide plate here. And then you couldn't see, oh, here we go, the sear grabbing hold of the plunger. Miracle was not revealed. Had to be redone.
How are they to know?
How were they to know? It took me forever to figure it out.
Oh, I'll tell you what.
So anyway, to get this little bit out, what you got to do is drill out a couple of tack welds, drill and remove this pin. Fortunately, that's a doable thing with modern technology. I just stuck a regular Daisy stock screw through there. It holds it fine and does its appointed job because it does bear on the bottom here. So now we've got the gun ready to fire again. So hey, just for hoots and grins, back out the wide shot. Oh, we fired it again. All right, so that's how the mechanism gets armed. Now, take a look here. This is the whole length of the spring. See that? That spring is all that long. But when the gun's compressed, when the gun's armed, when the sear's engaged, you hear the click. You see how short it is now? That's all spring power. Now, for those of you who might be interested, the spring in this gun is not a Red Ryder spring. It is not a 105B spring.
What is it?
It's a 499 spring, a low power precision spring built strictly for Daisy target guns.
Hey.
Why did we put it in here? Because it's a lot easier to cock. Does easy to cock mean anything? It does on a cutaway gun. Why fight with it? Illustrating the principle is illustrating the principle. Hey, let's shoot it one more time. Here we go. Bam, it fires. Now, part of the miracle that allows this to happen is this device. Now, it looks like a rear sight. You'd think it was a rear sight, and you'd be right, because it is a rear sight, but it's also the spring anchor. You'll notice that the rear sight spring anchor goes to the top of the receiver. It goes through the legs. See how there's a split here at the bottom of the plunger assembly?
Hold on. Yeah.
Okay, it goes through the legs of the plunger assembly and binds on this screw body, or the original pin that was put in there. That's what allows the mainspring to gather energy, because this spring stop slash target sight slash sight keeps the spring in position so that the gun can, once again, arm itself and get ready to fire. We're going to go ahead and fire it. All right, now, moving down the plunger assembly, which goes all the way from here, all the way to there. That's almost a foot long. You see this little pin? This little pin goes through the air tube and the compression cup, and is what the front of the mainspring rests on. That's what gives it its motive force. Now, we're going to have to cock it again to show you how this. Let's focus on here. Watch what happens when I cock the gun up here. As you can see, the air tube is being withdrawn. Now it's in place with the trigger. Now, this area, this void, is the compression chamber, and we measured it because I always thought it was 1 3/4 inches of cylinder here. That's roughly 0.90 in diameter. It's actually 2, so it's a little bit more volume than I had thought was available. When the spring is released, this cup seals the air inside and squeezes it really hard, and because it's squeezing it really hard, it's picked up through a little hole and forced out of the compression cylinder by the compression seal. And this is the abutment seal. It's a plastic seal common to the post-78 guns, and that's a little hole where the air tube goes through. So the air, all the air gets squeezed into the tube, and there's a hole right here in the tube where the air exits. See how? So you squeeze all this air and it goes through this little bitty asshole, little bitty hole, and is transferred down the air tube into the barrel, where it kicks the BB out of the magnetic release, accelerates the BB to about 50 feet a second, then the air takes over and it zooms on out here at a claimed 350 feet a second, which is mythology. I have yet to see any of these new guns that did better than 250, 265 max. But it's more than enough to get a BB moving, hit a target, hear a tink, and once again, innumerous shouts of joy. So, that's the basic operating mechanism of most every small frame Daisy ever made. So what are we talking about? We're talking about a stock screw, a top stock screw, a trigger screw, a lever screw, a pin here that can be removed and have a screw substituted. Those are the mechanical components that have to be removed. And then once you get to that point, you can use a mainspring compressor, a device that basically just moves the spring off the spring anchor, or sight in the case of the 105B. Pull that out of the way and jerk the whole assembly out of the backside. Mess around with the spring, mess around with the air tube, mess around with the compression cup, should you want to. Reassemble it, put it back in, continue shooting your Daisy. On a post-78, If you get a blockage for some reason in the actual shot tube itself, one method of clearing those is to pull all these guts out of the way and take a thin wire, 17 caliber bore brush, or excuse me, 17 caliber cleaning rod, and just tap the BB out the front. You won't be able to tap it from the front out the back because there is a machine recess here to keep the BB from rolling to the back side. The magnet holds it in place, but it also is not allowed to flop into the compression chamber for obvious reasons, because this could cause problems. So if you have a clog, that's one way to clear it. The other way is just to drive the whole assembly out, see what's going on. So I think, I'm pretty sure, we've covered all the reasons for having a one of, oh, we forgot.
Come on.
Last
now.
item. This is where the BBs are fed into the post-78 guns. They've all got a little plastic trap door there. And they rattle around in here. And you'll notice there's an inclined ramp right there. It's got a little opening at the top. Can we see that?
Let me, hold on.
Employ the zoom. Can you see that at all? I need more light.
Yeah, we'll go with it. They'll get the concept if they look at it themselves.
Anyway, they collect here and they roll up through this ramp when you invert the gun. Gravity feeds, so the muzzle has to be up when you cock the gun. And then they line up down here. A couple of them will get in a row in this little trough. And then right here is where they make a 90-degree turn, and the magnet pulls them into place for firing. So that's how your BBs get into the gun. And we've shown you, 6 times now how they get out of the gun. So that should be enough, I think. So, if you have any questions, put them in the comments. Tell us all about it. And we'll see if we can answer any of them. In terms of doing cutaways on other daisies, I'm inclined not to, because I'd much rather just build them, put stocks on them, hot rod them, and see them off to new homes. But if we get enough requests, I guess I could cut a wide body apart. Although, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
And I'm not cutting apart a Model 25. That's opening a can of worms that I don't want to address.
Cool.
So kids, that's all we've got for you today. This is Shane Bruce with Restomod Daisy, signing off.